Hi. We're nearing the end of 2018 List Mania. After this, I just have to finish the anime one, which I maybe got a little too ambitious with. I have some pretty grand designs for certain things in it. You'll just have to wait and see, hopefully, eventually. But we're going to talk about movies now. This is going to be like the book list in that it's going to include movies that didn't come out in 2018 that I just saw in 2018. Otherwise, it would be really, really incredibly short. Film is still definitely my most neglected medium of the sort of mediums that I try to keep up with. I've talked about why at some length before, and those reasons haven't really changed. I think what's going to have to happen if I ever want to get a kind of handle on movies and sort of start thinking of myself as someone who knows a lot about film is that I'm just going to have to like set a schedule, you know? Like one night a week, okay, this is movie night. I'm going to watch a movie. Something like that. Because I found what does work is like watching with people, you know, that kind of like forces the situation, or going to like a screening or something. I end up doing it. Otherwise, I just keep procrastinating and doing things that take less time. But whenever I do have the time to watch a great movie, I really, really enjoy it. Even if I end up watching it myself, which doesn't happen too often, like by myself, that is. Watching it myself implies that I sometimes watch movies as someone else. um, Anyways, so the first one we're going to talk about is a movie I watched by myself, and one of the rare movies on this list that actually came out in 2018, which is Girls on Panzer Das Finale. Part one of six. There's going to be six. I think this is only about an hour long movies comprising the finale of the Girls on Panzer media franchise, which has become an absolute juggernaut. Substantiated by the fact that they can make six movies and expect that people will go see them. But I love this. I really like this franchise. I like the anime a lot. I like the first movie a lot, but this might be my favorite yet. It's just so pure and straightforward. If you don't know and you can't infer from the image, this is about girls in tanks. Um, it's about a alternate future where they have Senshado, which is like tank art, the art of tank combat, which is this sport where nobody gets hurt somehow. The tanks just don't really damage each other. It's just kind of like paintball. Um, and these five girls are the main squadron of their school's force, and they compete with other schools, and it's just non-stop tank combat mixed up with some wacky slice of life antics. And I thought this succeeded on both of those fronts, both required fronts to a great degree. The first half is just this wonderful adventure down into the bowels of the school ship. Oh yeah, also in this future, all of the schools are on gigantic aircraft carriers, and they just like live and do everything on top of them. So this is like an unprecedented adventure down into the bowels of the ship, where they go see like the ship engineering students who are like totally cut off from the rest of the school because there's a rumor that there's another tank down there that they might be able to get into their force. It really has like a cinematic adventure type quality to it. Really good like kind of sequence based directing. They have to like prove themselves to the engineering students by doing a set of challenges, and each one just has really nice shifts in like tone and presentation to kind of do a variety of genre parodies and such. So the first like solid half is just kind of setting up that stuff, getting the new tank, introducing these characters, having some fun, having some jokes, establishing our characters and stuff. And then the second half is just one long tank battle. It's just non-stop tank combat with strategizing and gambits and all sorts of fun shenanigans. And I don't know. I love it. I'm not like a war person in general. I wouldn't say I'm like a military fetishist or anything, but something about tanks. You know, tanks specifically, I really like. And I just love in the abstract the love that this series gives its tanks. Which when you go to Japan, you can kind of see tank otakuism spilling out around Girls in Panzer, and also kind of embracing Girls in Panzer from the perspective of somebody who's mostly interested in like military stuff. And just that entire kind of community and the way that they've really embraced the series and champion it is really kind of exciting to me. Yeah, I don't know. It's like it's just more, you know. If you like other things in this franchise, you'll probably like this. If this entire segment has made you confused and disgusted, then probably don't bother. Next, we have A Clockwork Orange. This was part of a little Kubrick festival that a local art house theater was doing, so I went to a screening of this with my friend. I had seen it probably 3 times before. It's one of my dad's favorite movies. My dad is a huge Kubrick fan, and he showed me this, his oeuvre, at perhaps too young an age, strategically fast-forwarding through certain parts, which really only just made them more haunting and terrifying, but he distilled in me very early on a love for Stanley Kubrick's work that has only intensified into my adulthood. Definitely one of my favorite directors. A Clockwork Orange, if you don't know, is the story of this man here, Alex, who leads a band of his droogs. They're just basically hoodlums. They go around um, committing acts of ultra-violence and rape and vandalism and just like attacking people for no reason. Horrible, horrible, completely irredeemable people. And then Alex is eventually caught and arrested and found guilty of murder. And that's where things start getting interesting. And that's where he starts they start the revolutionary psychological experiment to see if he can be cured of his ultraviolence. And that's where the iconic scene is where his eyes are pulled open and he can't blink. You know, you've seen that scene. Man, that sucks. Even just doing it for like 10 seconds, I wasn't into it. So it's a deeply, deeply disturbing movie, extremely violent at points, set in this grim kind of industrial hellhole. Um, I had a film teacher that pointed out something that I thought was really cool, which is that when this film was made in the late 70s, all of the architecture and all of like the design and style that you see in the movie is like very modern kind of contemporary stuff, like things that would have been at the cutting edge of those mediums at the time. But in the movie, they're all like worn down and aged. They're graffitied all over. It's like the generation older than him was wearing the popular outfits and styles of like teenagers at the time of the movie's release. So it's this really cool sense of like immediate futurism and a very bleak and depressing futurism too. One that I'm sure really resonated with audiences at the time and still has like a very haunting impact on us now, even if we've kind of moved on from the explicit or the exact sort of movements that it's parodying. None of this sounds like something that I would like, right? If you compare this to like fun, oops, we're having this problem again. Yeah, fun tank adventures with cute girls. Well, why the heck would I want to watch this? Well, it's just so dang good. And even though everything that's being depicted in visually is very miserable, it's contrasted by one of the most fantastic scores ever. Wendy Carlos, a really critically acclaimed composer and arranger of scores. I think this is one of her best works. Just like a really kind of haunting and really kind of sonically aggressive and interesting electronic stuff that's mixed with a wonderful selection of Beethoven and Rossini. Beethoven, of course, playing a major part of Alex's character. He's a big Beethoven fan. Um, the the dialogue and stuff, even though sometimes it's near unintelligible with all of the kind of made up slang that the author of the book came up with for these characters in this imagined future. The delivery and kind of the charm of the characters is just hypnotic. And there's some really funny moments too. One that really stuck with me ever since I was a kid is when Alex goes home after his time in prison and he's been replaced and he's talking about who's this man eating great mumbly wumblies of toast and sitting on our couch. And I remember as a kid, just like the sudden irreverence of that, and the way that it kind of cuts through this strange tension in the scene, or near the end where he's doing the psychological experiments and he's talking about how he wants to smash the eggs and stuff. Like I think that was very fundamental in some ways to my sense of humor. Just this sort of this quirkiness that he has, that Alex has, that he's so disjoint from society in this other dimension. It really puts you off guard, such that you don't really think of it as this grisly, depressing film full of horrific deeds and tragedy, but really more of this kind of like carnivalesque, surrealist adventure where all sorts of strange things just kind of happen in succession. Um, yeah, I don't know, man. This is a pretty one of a kind movie. Even among Kubrick's oeuvre, he never went so far, I think, ever again. Um, well, I don't know. I guess it's sort of similar to Eyes Wide Shut in a lot of these regards. But Eyes Wide Shut is kind of different. It's like the Tom Cruise character is like in the opposite direction of Alex. Instead of imposing his madness onto a bleak world, it's like this explosively weird world that he just kind of stumbles through grim-mindedly. I don't know. All right, whatever. So I watched this. It was great to see it in the theaters. Even though I had seen it so many times before, I was very excited to go. Seeing it in the theater, I think the weirdest thing for me is that a lot of the scenes that I found funny, I was like one of the only people laughing. But then a lot of other people were laughing at scenes that I don't find funny at all. Like people were laughing during the singing in the rain scene, which is a scene that always just like transfixes me with horror. Like it's a really deeply disturbing scene. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's when Alex is singing in the rain while doing some really rather unpleasant things. Um, and people were laughing, and it was really strange to me the way that people were laughing. It almost seemed like they were just laughing because they were so uncomfortable that they couldn't help but laugh to just kind of break their own inner tension. At least that's what I would like to think. Otherwise, there was some very demented people in the audience with me that night. Yeah, so I saw that, and then a few weeks later, me and the same friend went to go see The Shining at the same festival. We saw two of the most scary and unpleasant movies in the Stanley Kubrick oeuvre, which is saying a lot. I also say the word oeuvre a lot because I think it's very fun to say. So The Shining is Kubrick's straight-up horror masterpiece, as implied by this. It's based on a Stephen King novel, but it's a very loose adaptation. Apparently, Stephen King got quite upset at the way that the film characterizes Jack Nicholson's character. I find this film extremely interesting, not just on the levels that it's great. I mean, it is great on all levels. The performance, the cinematography, of course, the exquisite beauty of the setting contrasted with the extreme terror and isolation you feel at every scene. All of these things that it's like famous for, it's great. And oh my god, like how good Danny Lloyd is as an actor, even though he's like 5 years old. You know, sometimes you see kids in movies and it's clear that like they don't really get it. But here, there's like an urgency and an agency to how he behaves that really does feel like a child that's been mixed up with all of this. Especially when he does the why can't I think of this guy's name? You know, Red Rum Man. Anyways, all of that stuff is great. All of that stuff is, of course, extremely great. Um, but what really interests me, what keeps me thinking about this movie is the various kind of mysteries and unsaid things and conspiracies around it. There's a documentary that I want to watch at some point called like Room 316 or whatever. The it's named after the room in the hotel that in the story they're told not to go into. Um, and basically it's a collection of conspiracy theories about The Shining, things that people think that Kubrick was hiding as a message. A popular one is that Kubrick based off his success and his great job in showing scenes on the moon in 2001, he was hired by NASA to fake the moon landing, and then The Shining is his like secret confession, and that there's all of these coded references that show you that he's actually talking about how he faked the moon landing. Crazy? I think that one is a little crazy because, of course, the moon landing wasn't fake. But it is easy to see that there's maybe something going on. Is it talking about the Holocaust? Is it talking about um, the brutal massacre of Aboriginal people in North America? Is it talking about some sort of complex Oedipus metaphor, some Oedipal system pulled from Freud? Everything that happens in this movie is like so dense with kind of associated symbols. There's so many just kind of strange things that you see and hear that it's very easy to kind of add up some sort of code if you kind of look at it the right way. Um, there's a lot of like famous things that they did intentionally to kind of disorient the viewer. One that I think is really, really cool that you might have heard about is that there is no plausible geometry for the hotel. That the way characters are shown leaving rooms and entering other rooms and stuff is totally inconsistent, such that if you ever tried to kind of map out what the interior of the hotel looks like, you just wouldn't be able to do it. And so you think that, you're like, whoa, that's really cool. And it definitely gives you like a kind of disoriented feeling sometimes that your brain subconsciously is sort of beginning to expect certain things and then having that denied. But then if you were the type of people that I think are featured in this documentary, you would start like mapping out all of the inconsistencies and looking for some sort of code and pattern. It's like, ooh, I don't know. Is there something there? You can't really put it past Kubrick. This is the kind of stuff that he was into too. Um, for me, this is the one that I'm actually really invested in. I think Jack Nicholson, his character, the name isn't coming to me, um, did something really bad in his previous job as a teacher before he moves out to become the caretaker. Of course, there's the thing about how he accidentally hurts Danny at some point. Um, that he was like drinking at some too much at one point. Blah blah blah. But I think there's like something even more. Something really bad happened, and there's one line that kind of clues me into it, where his wife suggests maybe we should leave. Maybe we need to go back into town. Obviously, something really weird is happening here. And he says, like, quit, like, leave. Like, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to mow lawns? Am I supposed to wash cars? But we know that he used to be a high school teacher. So he should have his teaching degree. So, like, why did he jump immediately to the most menial, lowest paid work? The sort of job that you go for when you can't get anything else, when clearly he has accreditation and could conceivably just work as a teacher. Why didn't he say that? Or is there some reason that he can't work as a teacher? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. It's a good question. And then if you start thinking along those lines, and then there's a scene very early on where they bring up like the grim story of like, okay, well, you should probably know what happened to the last person who had this job. And it's like he kind of already knows. So it's like, did he go here because he wanted to kill his family right from the start and he just thought this is like a good excuse? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Oh, what a good movie. What a good movie. It's so many things going on. Okay. Next I watched this. This might not be in the right order. I think maybe I saw this before these. I already made a long video talking about this movie, so I don't really have too much else to say about it. It really is just the experience you get looking at this picture. This woman heavily clothed, apparently in some deep cold, walking into a grim distance, surrounded by gray and misery, carrying a bucket because she has to go get the water. As Bellatar said, paraphrased, I wanted to make a movie that shows the brutality of everyday life, that you're always out there getting the water, that you're always out there eating, you're always having the same conversations, there's just no escape. It's about the heaviness of human life and the dark, dark wind that blows through it. Beautiful. Absolute masterpiece. See it if you ever feel like, oh, I'm too happy, what am I going to do? Oh, I just feel too happy lately. Go watch this. Maybe don't watch this. This is only going to make you a more rich, meaningful happiness. This is Wild Strawberries by Ingmar Bergman. The TIFF Lightbox in Toronto was doing a Bergman festival to celebrate 100 years of Bergman. I would have loved to go see many, many, many movies there, but it's not the easiest for me to get to Toronto, especially on weeknights. So I only saw a couple things. I really wanted to see this. I ended up missing like half of it because my bus was stuck in traffic. I played Animal Tower the whole time. It was unfortunate, but I grinded up like 500 points in Animal Tower. LO scored, yay! Anyways, so this is Wild Strawberries. I'd seen it once before during kind of my first Bergman phase, which happened around when I started university. I just kind of found out about him as a director and was like really blown away by everything I learned about him, so I set out to watch a bunch of his films. This was my favorite of them that I watched at that time. It's a lot more kind of upbeat than most of his movies, which isn't saying too much. His movies are generally very, very depressing. It's about this professor who's traveling to go receive an award. He's going with his daughter-in-law, who's just had a falling out with his son. They pick up some hitchhikers on the way. This group of 3 young musicians. And it's a lot of just kind of talking, sort of philosophical discussions, reminiscing. It's split a lot between him and flashbacks of him in his childhood. There's a lot of extended dream sequences too that are very surreal and very engrossing. Really lovely, beautiful movie. That in the end, I mean, I don't want to like spoil it, so to speak. But it's just sort of about like the richness of human connection and the fact that despite being able to reach some very depressing ontological and kind of epistemological understandings of the universe, like really feeling bad about how things are on the most fundamental level, there's still places you can find some happiness. There's still things that are worth doing that are meaningful to you. At least that's the kind of takeaway I get from it. Um, yeah, yeah, really great movie. I think this is a great starting point for someone who's interested in Ingmar Bergman. It's like very characteristic of him in a lot of ways. If you're kind of curious about what his style is like, and you want to see if it's worth kind of investing yourself more into it. But it's a lot more approachable, I think, than some of his more depressing, denser, kind of really masterpiece ones. I think another good starting point is this, The Seventh Seal, which I also saw during this festival. This is definitely his most famous movie. It's the one that has the scene where the knight is playing chess with death on the beach. You've probably seen it parodied in something or heard references to it. Uh, it's like one of those kind of iconic ideas, this idea of playing chess with death, that a lot of people are surprised to know only traces back to a movie made in like the late 50s. And that's just kind of how iconic an image it is and how well it's presented in this. So this is a film I actually thought I had seen. I thought I watched it during my first kind of Bergman blitz. But I think instead I had just seen the first initial scene. I'm using 2 usages of a homophone scene. I hope it's not difficult to follow. I had first seen a scene where he's playing chess with death on the beach, and that's what I kind of remembered from the movie, because that's the very iconic scene. And I kind of just, I think I thought that that was it, and I kind of extrapolated that I had watched the entire movie based on having watched that. But no, 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 no. There's actually so much more to this movie. It is quite an adventure with a very varied. Why am I doing this? With an extremely varied cast, all sorts of kind of wacky happenings and hijinks. It's hilarious. This is hands down the funniest Bergman movie I've seen. It's a very dark comedy for sure, given that it's all about death and the plague and kind of the insanity of the medieval era and what those people were forced to live through. But it's very funny nonetheless, with a very approachable, sometimes really kind of goofy comedy, like slapstick type stuff is there, played for laughs. It almost feels Shakespearean in this regard, that everyone kind of remembers the most highbrow aspects of it, but the reason that it's remembered so well and so fondly is more because of everything supporting that. All of the really bizarre comedy and memorable, lovable characters. And so yeah, I really recommend watching this. Of course, there are more grim things too. There is the more highbrow kind of philosophical discussions, which in typical Bergman fashion are quite bleak, all kind of about atheistic crises and stuff, and the really haunting absence of God. Um, there's a lot of really grim imagery of death and cults, and really driven home by the often use of the dies irae, you know, dun 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 bum 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 bum. I really like that. It's used heavily in Franz Liszt's Totentanz, which is like probably my favorite single piano piece ever. Yeah, so much to love about this movie for me. I think it succeeds on every level. I understand now perfectly why it's considered his masterpiece by many, not by me. I still give that to Persona. I love Persona so much, but yeah, I was really impressed. It was just so much more fun than I thought it would be. I think I got it into my head that we were just gonna watch a guy play chess with death, having a long discussion about death, sitting on a beach for like an hour and a half. But no, you get to see all sorts of stuff here. All right, next. Oh, can't even talk about this. This is just beyond. And then I saw this, which is actually a 2018 movie. I saw this actually in 2019 in Japan, but I'm going to count it because I saw it before I made this list. um, I saw this in Japan with English subtitles, which was very fun. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. No, I saw it in English with Japanese subtitles, which was quite interesting. I noticed now the Japanese poster also has like different logos and stuff to better reflect the Japanese audience. Like I really doubt the English poster has a line here. I might be wrong. I don't know. And Yahoo too. Yahoo is like way more popular in Japan. Anyways, I really like this movie. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought the visuals were mind-blowingly awesome, just like a total overload of imagery and density of jokes. I thought it was hilarious. Most of the jokes landed extremely well for me. I thought their irreverent tone towards Disney properties and the internet was like very uh, like not really like phoned in or out of touch. What's the opposite of out of touch? In touch. But if you say in touch, you sound like you're out of touch because nobody says in touch. They were lol worthy. I don't know. It just kind of felt like they actually kind of knew what they were talking about, and they were able to connect in a way that was really going for an audience that's hard to connect with. You know, making jokes about the internet, you're going up against like the snarkiest, most ironic, most irreverent crowd there is, but I don't know, at least for me, maybe I'm just out of touch, but I thought it was pretty funny. I thought did a good job kind of getting a sense of what makes the internet funny. Um, I liked the insane illogic and how everything is presented. They established very quickly that there is no kind of consistent set of rules for how our internet experience is mapped to the world of this internet experience. And once they kind of got it out of their way that it follows like no logic, and then they were just totally free to do whatever they wanted at any time. And to really great ends. Like, this movie has so many kind of layers of climax. I think it succeeds on everything that you could be hoping from it. Yeah, I don't know. I think the message is great too, about, you know, letting people kind of be themselves, not being too possessive in a friendship. I thought it was great that it was just a movie about friendship without any really unnecessary romantic plot shoved in, or any kind of greater significance. I think it did a great job of balancing kind of adult targeted humor with really kind of goofy stuff that kids would like. There's a joke near the end that I found hilarious where one of the characters says he's going to describe the secret of good parenting, and then he's just like drowned out by like a bunch of noise and stuff. And I don't know, I realized for the first time, like, there's like struggling parents probably sitting around me that felt genuine dismay that they weren't actually going to get any parenting advice or something. Maybe the possibility of that kind of crept into me for the first time, because typically I kind of think of, man, this is a weird tangent, but typically I kind of think of like parenting as from like an outsider perspective, and I just assume that like people know what they're doing all the time, because otherwise it's like too depressing. Anyways, there's a couple other jokes over the credits that are really mind blowing. They went for one joke. I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's like an entirely new type of joke to me. It anticipated and made fun of a reaction that I had never seen mocked before. So that was exciting. That was some new territory for me. Yeah, I don't know. I have really no complaints about this movie. The action sequences were great. Lots and lots of fun. Oh, I was going to talk about movies I watched on the plane, too. I knew there was more movies I watched. I watched a few movies on the plane ride to and from Japan. And yeah, I remember I was going to contrast this and its action sequences with Doctor Strange, which I watched on the plane, and I kind of liked. I really liked a lot of the visual effects and the really kind of psychedelic imagery and stuff. But then they would go to such lengths to show, oh, the buildings are all folding in on each other, and things are kind of blurring and sliding around. I was like, whoa, this is so cool. And then Dr. Stone would run up to the guy and they just do like the same choreography over and over again. Just punching and kicking and blocking. And it's like, I don't care. Like, I don't care. Like, why is this the focal point? Whereas this, you know, they would have the same amount of elaborateness and excitement and imagination in the setting, but then it would be like some really crazy over-the-top chase sequence or insane Colossus on Colossus fight scene, and like it wasn't just it's like, I don't care about that. I've seen that enough. What else did I watch on the plane? I watched Super Troopers 2 because I remember liking the original, but I didn't really remember anything about it. I thought it was funny. I don't know. It was alright. I don't really remember anything about it either. I think both of those movies I watched on planes, and both times I kind of fell asleep at some point. What else did I watch? Maybe that's it. I spend most of the time just watching anime, or writing, or reading, or sleeping, or listening to music. Anyways. Oh yeah, I didn't think to put those on the list. So, these are the movies I watched. My favorite was this one. Second place, probably one of these. Maybe this. I saw some really dang good movies, but this is still number one. Is that it? I feel like I saw more movies than this. Oh well, it's good enough. Alright. Bye-bye.